All right, I'd like to welcome everyone into the Break Free, Live Free live workshop. It's so good to have folks here joining us live and those who are catching the replay. Super excited for this topic. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. It's part of my own journey on navigating loss, overcoming addiction, and I've received a lot, and that's something that I want to be able to give to people from my own experience in this. And so, really excited to have people coming in. Today, we're going to be talking about how we can break free from the chains of lust and addiction and become more the men that God's created us to be. And I promise that by the end of this workshop, you'll be more equipped with tools to live a more free life and live with the confidence that overcoming addiction is possible. Before we dive into the workshop in earnest, I want to go ahead and ask a question. So that way you guys, I want to make sure the tech is all set up good, that like we can communicate back and forth in the chat a little bit. And so the question that I want to ask you, and you can simply reply down in the chat with just one of the numbers that you see on the screen right now, is how has the battle been going so far for you? Type 1 in the chat if it's been difficult, but you find yourself hopeful because you found resources like this, found brotherhood elsewhere and like other places, and you're like, yeah, I'm in a good place, and I'm hopeful. Type 1 if that's the case for you. Type 2 in the chat if you see yourself struggling but you're ready to make changes, and like not just make changes but like ready to get better. You're like, yeah, this has been hard, but I'm ready to do something to make changes. And type 3 in the chat below if you've been feeling pretty beat up by this and more of this desperation that you're experiencing for some sort of hope forward. So if you type one of those three numbers, just the number itself in the chat, that lets me know that the technology is working okay, and it also helps me to get a feel for like where people are coming in. Like one of the things about this struggle, this addiction, is that everyone's coming in from a different place, right? Everyone's coming in from, whether that's, struggling for years or struggling for a few months. Everyone's got a different place in this battle. So I see a couple ones coming in. That's good. A couple ones, and I'm going to just give a couple minutes too, because I know we're just a few minutes past 8 for people to roll into the workshop. So, but it's good. I'm starting to see a little action down in the chat, and that's great. So, another question I want to ask you guys is like, why are we here? Why are we here? And you might be like, well done, Nick, that's obvious. You said right at the beginning why we're here, right? This is a workshop on overcoming addiction, overcoming lust, becoming who we are. But it's so much more than that. Like the reason that we're here is because this is something that, and I just made a post about this earlier today. The final battle that we hear in the Fatima promises is that for marriage and family. Marriage and family. And one of the biggest areas where marriage and family is being attacked is in the realm of sexuality, the realm of lust. Why are we here? Because this is a big problem. Not just for you who's listening to this workshop right now, but for a lot of men out there. And my mission is to be with men like yourself, to be with men, to help you guys, to help myself even, in some regards, continue this battle of like, how are we fighting against sexual temptation? How are we fighting against lust? How are we allowing ourselves to be equipped? How are we allowing ourselves to come together to overcome addiction or lust or whatever it is that we're facing? And another question to ask is, why are you here? Like, part of the reason I'm here is because, like, again, going back to the beginning, what I said, this is my passion. I want to help men overcome addiction. Like, ever since I remember, like, at the age of 17, hearing Jason Everett talk about the theology of the body and how our bodies are good and our sexuality can be good, I'm like, wow, people need to hear this. People need to hear the different side of sexuality. And that's why I'm here, is because there's this passion that the Lord's put on my heart to work with men to help them become more who they're created to be. And I know that sexuality, sexual sin that is, or lust, can be an impediment to you becoming the saint that God wants you to be. But the question that I want to ask you is like, why are you here? It can't be simply like, I want to do this battle better, or I want to try to get a few extra tips or a few more tricks in the bag to overcome this. No, like you have to really ask yourself this question, like, what is your why? What is your why? Because it's going to be an important thing to come back to throughout this workshop and throughout this journey of you fighting to overcome whatever it is that you're fighting to overcome. Whether that's struggles with lust, struggles with masturbation, struggle with porn use. Coming back to that why. Like, is it, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. I want to be able to break through this so I can actually find my vocation. Whatever that why is, it's going to be a really important thing to come back to. All right, and then one more question before we dive right into this. A question that I think we can all ask ourselves when we're about to get into something that's new, that is like a new resource, a new workshop. This question that can come into the back of our heads is like, will this really help me? And there's 6 myths that I kind of want to work through one by one to debunk like these myths, but these are some common ones that we come up against when we encounter this new resource in this battle of trying to overcome lust. And one of those resources, or one of those myths, is I'm just not trying hard enough. You can just pray the porn away. Once you're in a different stage of life, the porn's not going to be a problem. Once I'm married, once I have kids, once the kids are out of the house, right? All of these are like myths or lies we might tell ourselves that like once I'm in a different stage, then it's not going to be a problem. You're stuck this way. Your addiction means you're bad, you're not good, there's something inherently wrong with you. And then lastly, sex is a sin. So I want you to take a minute, and again, just like we did at the beginning with putting 1, 2, or 3 in the chat, which one of these myths or multiple myths like have you struggled with currently or in the past with how you look at this battle with lust, this battle with addiction? Which of these like are you like actively thinking about now in this workshop as you hear me start to present this? Like, okay, Nick, this sounds great, but these are the thoughts that are holding me back. So go ahead and type in the chat. Again, just one of the numbers. If a different thing comes to mind too than one of these 6 like common myths, then go ahead and type that in the chat as well. I'm gonna grab a drink, but yeah, let me know what that is for you. What number is a struggle for you, and then I'm going to go through each of these one by one and give a little more insight. Okay, so we'll go back to that first myth. That first myth, you aren't trying hard enough. And I think this is a common myth we tell ourselves. Anton just typed in the chat there 1, 4, and 5, and 6. So yeah, a good number of them. Number one, like this myth, like you aren't trying hard enough. This is such an easy one to fall into. It's like, if I can just try harder, if I can just be like a better man, then I won't like have to struggle with this lust anymore. I won't have to struggle with keep falling back into the same old behaviors. Like the truth here is it's not a matter of trying harder. It's not a matter of like using more willpower. It's a matter of like looking at the right area to dig into, right? When we just try to white knuckle this, when we just try to like try harder, like then we are relying on willpower, and that's not the answer. The answer is actually to not try harder, but to dig deeper into what the root is that we're coping with when we're looking at porn. Myth number 2 you can just pray the porn away. And I love this one, especially because as we come at it from like a Catholic perspective. Prayer is great. We should never stop praying, right? We should never stop asking the Lord to deliver us from this sin. And like, don't get me wrong, like I am a believer in miracles. I believe that God can do awesome things in our lives. And if he gives you a miracle in like helping you heal from this addiction or helping you heal from struggles with lust, praise God. Don't stop praying. But the truth is here, it's not just prayer that we want to look at. We also want to look at the psychological reality of things. That's where my story and my healing journey comes back to, is like actually encountering a integrated approach to how we can overcome this addiction. Myth number 3, once you're in a different stage of life, porn or masturbation or lust will no longer be a problem. Again, I already commented on that a little bit. We can get into this mindset that as soon as we have this switch, like as soon as we get married, as soon as we have kids, as soon as like, you know, something changes, then it'll like be okay. But the truth is here, like the problem won't go away passively. Like very small chance that it'll just disappear one day. The truth is like we have to really do the work to look inside and see like what's going on here and be active in our strategy of like how we're approaching this and attempting to overcome lust or addiction. Myth 4, you're stuck this way. And I think this is a really great one, because it's just like, it's like almost like this last resort like narrative we start to feed ourselves. We've gone through this, we've tried harder, we've tried prayer, we've tried small groups, we've tried online workshops, we've tried all of these things, and it just hasn't worked. And all of a sudden we believe like, yeah, I am stuck this way. There's nothing that's gonna get me out of this. But the reality is like, and I love this, this comes from a lady who does some work in the similar industry of helping guys overcome addiction. She says, you weren't born in this world addicted to porn. You weren't born in this world addicted to porn. It's a learned behavior, and so that means you can unlearn it. That's the truth of this myth, is like, no, you're not stuck this way. You weren't born in this world addicted to porn. That means it was a learned behavior. That means you can unlearn it. Number 5, your addiction means ... Your addiction means that you're bad, you're not good, you're unlovable. We have so many different attached narratives that we feed ourselves, labels that we give ourselves when we struggle with this particular vice, right? And what ends up happening is we allow the addiction to define us. We're no longer defined by the worth we have as a son of God, the worth that we have, the unrepeatable dignity and value that we have as a son of God, but rather we're defined by our addiction. And that's not true, right? Like our worth can never be stripped from us. It's one of the biggest lies, it's one of the biggest myths, and it's one of the easiest to start to believe. And when the rest of these start to fall down, right? We start to get stuck in these realms of hopelessness, believing that like it's because I can't try hard enough, and then all of a sudden the labeling starts to pile it on top of it as well. And then lastly, sex is a sin. And I think this one is a really big one for so many people, that I don't think a lot of people out there think sex is a sin, quote unquote, but I think a lot of us have these false narratives surrounding sexuality that we wrestle with, right? It depends on how we grew up, depends on who gave us sex education, depends on what our relationship with our parents was in sexuality. Like, a lot of times we fall on either end of a spectrum, where there's this puritanical lens on sex, right? Where there's this idea that sex is the only thing we can use it for is procreation. Everything else about it is evil. And even that, like, procreation bit is like an unnecessary, or what is the word looking for? Not unnecessary, but like it's like a hindrance. It's like we do it because we have to procreate, right? Like, and that's one end of it, is where like everything, like it feels like sex is wrong, or our sexual desire is wrong, and we can get all these kind of mixed messages from our parents and society that maybe what I know with sex is not good. Or we can go on the complete opposite spectrum, where maybe the messages is like always like this feeling of like, yeah, no, whatever, sex isn't that big of a deal. You know, people in high school, from when we were high school, they were doing it. People outside of it, or we watch the different shows, like Friends is notorious for like normalizing sexuality, and we feel stuck where it's like one end of the spectrum or the other, and we need to have a better, more integrated, grounded understanding that like sex is good, right? Our sexual desire is good, and in fact, like theology of the body points to the fact that like we're made for other people. That's why we have sexuality. That's why we have a desire for sex. Is this reality that like we're made for another. And one of the things too that I think we can immediately start to, like, more in that puritanical sense, is like anything, if we start to struggle with this this sin, right? We're struggling in lust, we're struggling it with addiction for years and years and years. One of the things that we can fall into very easily is to associate everything with our struggle, that is the masturbation or addiction or like even our bodies, as bad. I was talking with a buddy over coffee, and we were talking about that, and he's like, yeah, the fact is sometimes you just wake up with an erection. And he's like, and that's life. Sometimes we have to be super blunt about that and realize that we are sexual beings. Now, never will you hear me say that porn is good, that masturbation is good, right? Or lust is good. All of these things are disordered uses of sexuality. But sex itself, the fact that, you know, we do, like the arousal system that we have for sex and the arousal system that we have when we wake up are intertwined. That's why we have erections when we wake up. And like the more blunt we can be about that, like the better, because what we're doing is accepting the fact that we are sexual beings. And I think that's maybe one of the areas that we can struggle with the most, is like accepting the fact that like I have sexual desire right now. Okay, like that, is that bad? Maybe if we've associated sexual desire long enough with porn use or masturbation use, then we automatically assume it's bad, or we start to run from it. But a lot of this comes back to like just recognizing like, okay, it's okay that I'm experiencing sexual desire right now. The next area I want to go into, I'll talk about the goal for a second. So those 6 myths are all things we start to believe about this process. Like when we start to think about like, how am I going to overcome addiction? We believe any one of those, or all 6 of those. And the fact is, all of them are myths. They're all like, we can debunk all of those false narratives. And that allows us to move into, one, going back to the why. What is your why for why you want to overcome this? But then 2, what is our goal in this workshop? I want you to leave this workshop with the confidence that if you struggle with addiction and lust, that you can overcome that addiction and you can better navigate lust. That is our goal here today. What we'll cover the number one thing that we need to keep in mind regarding sexual sin. We'll cover a simple framework to help us navigate lust and addiction. I'll talk about some real life examples and stories from, you know, my own life from work with clients, and then I also talk about an open door into community, into other opportunities I provide to help men become who God made them to be, and then question and answers at the end. So, the number one thing that you need to hear, and go ahead and type in the chat too, if the pacing's good right now. If I'm moving too quickly, if you guys need to throw a slide back, let me know. But I'm gonna assume that we're rolling pretty good here. If there's any questions, or if you're good, maybe a thumbs up in the chat is good. But I'm going to keep assuming that we're running on a good pace here. I'm also going to take a break just to grab some water because I know I tend to present fast and maybe slow things down just a bit here. So the number one thing that you need to hear, that we need to hear if we've struggled with sexual addiction in the past, is that porn, sexual addiction, masturbation, like, it's not the problem, but the symptom, right? Porn and sexual addiction isn't the problem, but a symptom. When we look at porn, masturbation, like, etc., these are not just bad behaviors, but they're sins. And like at the root of them, there's these complex coping mechanisms, and it gets back into what I was saying from that idea of like we're stuck this way, right? When we're stuck this way, or when we believe that mindset that we're stuck this way, we want to fight it back against that. Like, why did this addiction come up in the first place? And that really helps, like, to understand addiction from a scientific standpoint. Like, I'm using this behavior compulsively. Like, the fact that I'm using it compulsively means that I'm choosing it, or not even choosing it. Like, I'm not free in the way that I am using these behaviors, right? There's something about me that's not free. This compulsive nature in like using porn, masturbation, etc. And so why is that important? Because that points to this is a coping mechanism. There's something triggering me. There's something beneath the behavior itself, right? And we need to start separating that out and start to see that. Like, the number one thing that we can hear and really sit with is like, porn, sexual addiction is not the problem, but the symptom. It points to something deeper. And in fact, like, if we can get to that something deeper, you're not going to just like be better off with the addiction, right? You're not just going to overcome that, but you're actually going to be a better man. You're actually going to be a better husband. You're going to be a better dad, because we're getting to the deeper root of something that is more seriously a problem than the outside behavior. And so that's the number one thing we want to look at. I want to tell you a little bit about my story and my own journey with like how I came to find healing from addiction, because I think this is like an important aspect, because along the way in my story I found like the most important aspect of overcoming my porn addiction was relationship and an integrated approach. Relationship and an integrated approach. So my story is pretty similar to a lot of men out there, where I had my first iPod, and I encountered like sexual images pretty young, probably around the age of 10, give or take a year or two there. And it wasn't too long before like I became hooked. And I remember in high school I struggled with a lot of self-image stuff and like a lot of fears of inadequacy. And when that was the case, it became very easy for all of a sudden I'm using this behavior, this porn, to cope more and more and more with this inadequacy, this emotional wound, essentially, like this belief, this deep-seated belief that I'm not good enough. And so what would I do? I'd turn towards the porn, turn towards masturbation to feel temporarily good, right? I could feel good enough for a few seconds using porn. And that entrenched itself into a pretty severe addiction. There was a turning point towards the end of high school where I mentioned earlier that like, yeah, I heard Jason Everett talk about sexuality, and that was such a huge turning point for me, because I went from like this reality of like, I'm bad, I'm terrible, to no, like your sexual, like your desire for sex, that's actually really good. And it points to like a deeper reality of like you're made for others, and like the whole Trinity, like the fact that like there's, man and woman coming together, pouring forth life, that is the Trinity, like God the Father, God the Son, pouring forth life, the Holy Spirit. All that's wrapped up in the theology of the body and like our sexuality and like why it's good. And so that was a turning point from the age of like 17 where I'm like, okay, I'm going to start to work towards getting better in this addiction process. And it was a process, you know, that's one of the most important things. I keep saying there's a lot of important things here, but like, you know, the number one thing we need to hear is like, it's always a symptom. There's always something deeper to look towards. And then, you know, relationship in an integrated approach is actually going to be the best way to find what that deeper thing is. And so when we're in that too, it's going to be a journey. It's going to be a process. Like it's a marathon, not a sprint. Sometimes like in that process, it can feel like a quick chiropractic adjustment, and like we can snap into place, and like it's like, oh wow, actually that felt good, and like we make change happen quickly. Other times it is this paced out, slower process where we're slowly building strength, like going to the gym over and over and over again. The important thing is like we need to remember that like this is a journey, this is a process, not an event. This is a process, not an event. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And my marathon, my process started at 17, where I started to find different resources, find different guys and like accountability partners, different apps to help me start to find that healing process. But it wasn't really until I started meeting with he's actually like a counselor in training. We met at Bob Evans, that like the journey started to pick up pace quite a bit. And he asked me some really important questions, some really like poignant questions about why I struggled with porn. Like even to the point of like asking a question of like, okay, you know, what is it about the porn that you are attracted to? And at first, like as a guy, you're like pumped full of testosterone, and you're like, well, it's females, their bodies, right? Like that's what we're physically attracted to, and that's true, right? Like God made us attracted to females, made us visual beings in that way, but He asked deeper questions like, but how does it make you feel? How does it make you feel? And that's what led to this deepening process of like, what is the root of my porn usage? What is the root of that? And that still was like a piece of the puzzle, a stepping stone. It wasn't until I actually started to receive mentorship that I was able to put together even more pieces of like, oh, this is what I'm coping with. And it was that integrated approach of like, we're looking at mind, body, and soul in this to really see what is it that a part of me learned to use porn to cope with. And when that was found, it literally took like 3 months in mentorship. And when it was found, like that was that. Like the root was found, and the process, you know, ran its course, and I no longer have this compulsive desire to use porn. Right? And I think that's an important note right there, that like that compulsive desire to use porn is gone. Like that, it's broken. It doesn't mean I don't experience lust. It doesn't mean I don't experience, right, the same thing that every guy will experience, you know, until they die, where they see a beautiful woman and there's this temptation to use that beauty. That still exists for me, but the big thing that was broken for me in the journey of overcoming addiction was the fact that like once the root was found, that broke the chains of using masturbation and pornography in a compulsive way. All of a sudden, I became free because I was identifying what it was that I was coping with. And so that's the power of getting to the root. That's the power of allowing ourselves to dive deeper into relationship to help us understand why our addiction is the way it is. And I want to introduce to you the MORE method. So the MORE method is a simple framework for helping us navigate lust and overcoming addiction. So at this point, I told you the number one thing is that like the porn and masturbation is a symptom, not the root problem. I shared my story about me coming to find and identify the root problem. Now the question is like, how can I give you, those who are listening right now, the tools to start to discover what it is that your root problem is, so that way you can begin to navigate lust and overcome addiction. And the method's pretty simple. We're going to talk about step 1, awareness. Step 2, understanding. And step 3, action. So these 3 steps, if folks who are listening are familiar with Saint Ignatius of Loyola, you might notice some of these steps come from his 3 ways, at least the way that Father Timothy Gallagher presents the rules of discernment. He leans into this 3-step paradigm on how we can better discern the spirits. So like discerning like what it is, like is this God moving inside me? Is this the enemy moving inside me? Like what is it that's going on in my interior world? And I borrowed that and I used it for the More method. Saint Ignatius used awareness and understanding to lead to action, which accomplishes his goal of growth and holiness. Right? He uses awareness plus understanding that leads to action, which accomplishes the goal of holiness. A very simple paradigm for a very complex goal, right? Growing in holiness isn't like a simple task. It's complex. There's a lot of components there. But if we can simplify it, then it makes it possible. And the same thing with overcoming addiction and better navigating lust. It can be this thing that feels really overwhelming, this thing that feels like it's too monumental to actually overcome. But if we can slow it down and simplify it, we have a simple paradigm for a complex goal. Awareness, understanding, leading to action, and in the More method, that accomplishes freedom from lust and addiction. So let's dive into the first step, awareness. So this first step, we want to look at a couple things here with awareness. We want to look at the behavioral triggers, and then we want to look at emotional triggers. So the behavioral triggers are more of the surface level behaviors. These guys are, let's try to pull my notes up. The behavioral triggers are things that we can notice physically, like environmentally. So when you are triggered into acting out by watching porn or using masturbation, what physically do you notice going on? Did I just see an online ad? Did I just see like an attractive woman? Did I have a sexual fantasy, right? What do I notice environmentally and physically going on? The next step, though, is we don't want to just stop at that baseline awareness of the physical triggers, but we want to take it deeper. The deeper drivers to all of this, and this, again, it comes back to that number one point, is like, there's something deeper here that's going on. And that's the emotional triggers. These guys are the deeper drivers. What do I notice with these emotional triggers? And the first, a good first, wave of emotional triggers, especially as men, sometimes, we can be a little blunted in our emotional recognition, but the first wave of emotions can be a little easier to identify. Am I feeling hungry? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling lonely? Am I feeling tired? Very simple acronym for that is HALT, right? Am I hungry, alone, angry, or tired, right? Those 4 are the kind of first wave emotions that we can see that lead into the behavior of masturbation or seeking out pornography to cope with those emotions. Boredom and inadequacy are also common ones that I hear guys bring up. And what I also want to share with you is I missed the graphic there. Awareness is what triggers you. So halt is a great example, a great starting point. But go ahead and like type in the comments like which one of these not behaviors, but emotions, like particularly do you find yourself struggling with? Maybe it's not even like struggling with like direct correlation to using porn or masturbation or struggling with lust. But which one of those, just in general, like do you feel often? And it's like, oh, I don't like that. Like this feeling comes up and it's like I need to get rid of this feeling, because that's going to be a really important indicator on like what it is that is going on in a deeper way within us, and then helps us move towards the next step. So go ahead and post that in the comments below on which one of those emotions feel like they're more of a hard emotion to sit with. Or like you look at it, you see it on the chart, and you're like, I don't want to feel that. It's important to understand that emotional trigger, because that leads to the second step, right? The second step, one second. The second step is understanding, and this is an important part of the process where we need to understand that like we all are wounded and have learned to cope with the wounds. This helps us point to what is the root of the problem. You know, what I love to come back to in this integrated approach, to the approach that I but I was trained on through Catholic Psych and then received in Catholic Psych through mentorship, was this model that we're made for relationship, broken in relationship, and healed in relationship. We're made in relationship, broken in relationship, and healed in relationship. And so what does that mean? It means that we all are wounded. We all have come from some sort of broken past, and we've learned to cope with those wounds. So we go back to those emotions from the last slide. We've learned ways to cope with that. Sometimes it's not even like maybe it's just avoiding. Maybe it's just like doing more work around the house. Maybe it's doing more work at work. Maybe it's going on a run. But one of the learned behaviors that we've learned and need to unlearn is the behavior of coping with masturbation or pornography. Again, this comes back to the psychoeducation of development of compulsive behaviors, right? Why are you not free in this battle? There's an element of not being free to choose something besides the pornography or masturbation, right? What's not letting you be free in that is this connection back to this being a coping mechanism, right? And we need to ask ourselves these kinds of questions at that first my first encounter with the guy who was getting his counseling degree, but we met at a Bob Evans. But he's like asking these really good questions, like, what is your history with porn usage? When did that start happening? What kind of porn were you watching? What did it make you feel like? These are all really important questions to understand what it is that you are coping with. Like, why are you doing what are you doing? So it always starts with awareness. This awareness of the physical triggers, but then more deep, the emotional triggers. Then that leads to this understanding. Why do I act out by using porn? Why do I act out by using masturbation? Because there's been this connection. And I'm here to like help you deepen your awareness around that, to see that connection. Because we can follow this very like great model of like self-awareness leads to self-understanding. Like I can start to understand myself, which then leads to self-possession. Once you start to see that connection, and this is maybe the hardest part of overcoming addiction, overcoming lust, struggles with lust, is to see that connection. Because like, once you start to see that connection, you can then begin to choose something else. You can begin to choose not to act out, right? You're starting to unlearn that process. Just like that clicking moment for me that happened 3 months into mentorship. Like, that was me starting to see and undo that. And like, this happens with guys that I work with. I know I was working with a guy, and within, like, 4 or 5 months, we hit that connecting point. And the behavior remained, but it was getting better. But what was big was that he saw it, and all of a sudden he's like, I don't desire to watch porn anymore, right? The desire starts to go away. That urge to, like, watch porn, the craving to watch porn goes away when you can get to that root of, like, understanding why you do what you do. So that awareness piece, moving into understanding, and then understanding gives way to self-possession, which that leads us to the last step, which is action. Again, once we are aware of the trigger and then understand the emotional and or intimacy wound that we struggle with, we can choose something new. And we can ask that question, what emotional or intimacy need am I coping with right now? Right? If we've done our work, if we've done that awareness step, we can ask that question, and then we can ask, like, how can I get this met besides using porn? Are there other relationships I can turn towards to help me feel seen? Is there other places I can actually take my anger in healthy ways? Is there other ways that I can help myself no longer feel inadequate, or let that part of me express in some sort of relationship where I can get a need met? And this is where it all comes back to relationship. How am I choosing to put myself into relationship? And we want to simplify the process as much as possible, right? The simple paradigm for a complex issue, it's all about the process, not the event, taking small steps in the right direction. And so when we look at action, we can go for 2 levels of action that I like to look at, is micro action and then macro action. So micro action is good for the in the moment interventions. And we can take the Moore method and apply it in this micro way, like in the day to day. So what does that day to day look like? I notice that I'm this is the awareness piece. I notice that I am triggered. I desire to watch porn, or I'm experiencing sexual arousal, or I'm experiencing fantasy. That's what I'm aware of. Then allows us to move to understand why am I triggered. Again, we go back to, I just saw an ad online, or maybe my boss just laid into me, and like now I'm all triggered. Now I'm like upset, visibly upset. And then we can move into action. So again, on the micro level, we're looking at the here and now. Like, how is this helping me in this relationship in the here and now? And so we notice that we're aroused, notice that we're wanting to use porn to cope. Then what do we do action-wise? One of the best things we can do is like stop, drop, and breathe. Use like a mindfulness tool. So like, stop what you're doing. You notice you're aroused, but then and then you're understanding why that trigger is, and then so stop, drop, pay attention not just to like the thoughts that are going on or to the triggers, but to your body. You're connecting with something besides like this really triggering like sensation of like I gotta go use porn. Like the first movement is always to awareness, and then understanding, and then stop in the moment. Stop, drop, pay attention to the body, and breathe. And like a really simple breathing exercise could be taking a big deep breath in for 4 seconds, and then hold it for 4 seconds, and then let it out for 4 seconds. So a simple mindfulness stop, drop, and breathe exercise can help in the moment. Or you can like go for a run. You can disable. What are some other practical actions you can do? Like if it was an ad that you saw on your screen, disable the ad, hide the ad, call an accountability partner, say a quick prayer. All of these things are really, really good actions to take in the here and now. These small actions that take us in the right direction. But what's more important is the micro actions that we can take. So the here and now is great, but that's like where a lot of guys find themselves stuck. Like you've tried the filters, you've tried all of these different micro actions, and they're good, but alone they're gonna leave you wanting. They're gonna leave you not actually taking direction that leads to the deeper healing that needs to be taking place. The macro actions is like the strategy part. So micro, managing in the moment, macro, strategy. What relationships are helping me heal the deeper underlying emotional wounds? How am I prioritizing relationships? How am I having that frame shift from from a sprint to a marathon, a single game in the season to a whole season, right? How am I shifting that? How am I increasing my muscle of awareness, particularly in like this particularly in my emotional needs, right? Like if we're increasing our awareness, if we're getting better at recognizing our awareness and our emotional needs, that's going to help us with that first step of awareness. So those are like some of the longer, bigger picture frame like items that we can look at for the macro process, the strategy process. Again, looking at how are we prioritizing relationships, how are we getting into those relationships, and like another good analogy that I want to use in kind of story is by going back to Ignatius of Loyola. Right, he has the 14 rules, and in the 14th rule, it's oriented towards like what can we do when we're wrestling against the enemy. And he uses this castle analogy. He's like, the enemy is like trying to get in at the weakest point of the castle, of our castles. And when we look at the micro actions, when we look at the behavioral things we can do, that's like us strengthening the wall around us. Think about the filters, think about quick interventions, going out for a run, even like mindfulness to a degree is like us building this wall, trying to make us impenetrable to like sexual temptation or lust. And the walls are great. We should build up the walls. But at some point, the walls are going to fall back. They're going to fall apart, right? The enemy's going to find that weak point. He's going to find where the filters not enabled. He's going to find that one night at the hotel where your phone's not locked down. He's going to find that moment of weakness, and he's going to get in. The question that I want to ask you is, will you be ready as the man behind that wall to fight off the enemy, to be able to be free to say no? That's where the macro action really takes effect. That really becomes an important aspect of this, is like, how are you strengthening the man behind the wall? How are you choosing to prioritize relationship? And that's where I want to leave off the presentation, really, is like, how are you growing? How are you strengthening the man beneath? Because that's going to be the biggest player in this, is, again, that self-discovery, awareness leading to self-understanding, leading to action. And that can only be done in relationship. So small groups or online courses, mentorship, spiritual direction, coaching, therapy, these are all ways that you can move into relationship with other men, with people who can point to things that you might not be able to see, to help you start to connect the dots and strengthen the man beneath the wall or behind the wall, right? To help you find those weak points, to help you find those wounds that you've coped with for so long by using porn or masturbation. So I've talked a lot, like a lot, and shared a lot of information with you. What I want to do before we wrap things up, because I want to review, I want to ask you a couple questions. In question number 1, and go ahead and type this in the comments below. What was the most useful thing you learned today? So those of you who are live, go ahead and type that in here. Even if you're not live and you're catching the replay on this, like go ahead and share that in the comments, because I think it's really helpful to hear. Like it's helpful to hear what I'm presenting, what I'm sharing, but helpful for a lot of guys out there as well to probably hear what's standing out to other men. I know, brotherhood plays a really big role in that. So those of you who are live right now, go ahead and comment that in the chat, and then those catching replay, feel free to share your thoughts too. I'm gonna take a minute to get some water, and then we'll keep going. So question number 1, and then we'll go to question number 2. Question number 1: what was the most useful thing you learned today? Take a minute for people to let the answers roll in, and then we'll move on to that question number 2. So the difference between our macro strategies, aka how we win the war, from our micro strategies, how we win the battle. Yeah, that's that's good. Like, and it's so easy for us to get trapped in that state of like, if I just win the battle, then I'm headed the right direction, right? If I'm just in this one-on-one battle with the enemy, engaging with him, then I can win this battle. But then the question is like, how are we looking at the long-term picture? How are we looking at the strategy that sets us up for long-term success? So that's great. Yeah, and I think one of the most important things too to remember in all of this is like, there's another, to address the root instead of getting caught up in the habit. Yeah. I think that's like one of the deceptive things too with the enemy is like, he wants us to see like just one side of this battle, right? And like when we can go back all the way to the beginning slides of like those 6 myths, like he wants us to believe all of those, and wants to believe that like it's just that you're bad and you struggle with this. But the reality is like, it's like this art of misdirection, this deception, right? He's the great deceiver. The reality is like there's a deeper root here. And if we can get to that root and we can get that intimacy need met, then like we don't have any need for the coping mechanism. The next question I want to ask is like, number 2, may I have your permission to share more about what I do as a mentor? And I'll take a minute to pause. I know my stream seems to be a little behind, because I like ask a question and then a minute or two, like I think answers start to roll in. So this is one of the few live workshops that I've ran a couple of them, but I'm still getting used to the tech behind it. So this is me filling in while I'm waiting for an answer. But I want to ask that question, do I have permission to share more about what I do as a mentor? Because I love sharing this free content, and I love like being able to equip men to like better be prepared to battle. Like the more method, like I want people to know that. Like I want everyone to know that, because it's like there shouldn't be any secrets to why you're struggling with this addiction. There's enough research, there's enough knowledge out there, and hopefully like this workshop was able to help you see some of that. But I also do a lot as a mentor. I do a lot in working with men to help them become more who they're created to be. And yeah, it's just something that I'm really excited about. So, and again, I think my setup is like a little lagged out behind on waiting for replies. I'm gonna go ahead and just keep going because I'm assuming the replies will come here in a second. But I really love what I do, and I want to share that with people in the workshop and those who are catching this right now. Okay, there they come. Absolutely, I've been in mentorship with Catholic Psych, and it changed my life. It takes a while to think through and type a response, and yes. All right, sweet, awesome. So it's a little both technical, and then also being on the other side of the screen, people need time to think about the questions. So, all right, and so what do I do? Why do I do what I do? Again, this comes back to a lot of my journey on like striving to become more who God's created me to be, the saint that He's created me to be. I've launched a few different projects. So Crafted for More is my mentorship practice where I walk with men through integrated mentorship, trained through Catholic Psych, and then Men Striving for More is also Discord community that I run to help men find brotherhood, and then the Hey Brother podcast. So these are three kind of projects that I've launched recently to really live out that call to help men become who they're created to be. And one of the ways that I help men is through mentorship. And what does that look like is something that I want to share with you. So mentorship is an online Catholic. Some of you may be familiar with the Catholic Psych Institute. It sounds like in the comments you are below. But what is mentorship? Mentorship is online Catholic accompaniment where we're looking at the whole reality of the human person. And so we're looking at the full spiritual anthropology of the person. Like the program that I was trained in is a training program that goes through anthropology, so what makes a human, this is a blueprint of a human being, and then anthropology, psychology, and spirituality. This totally integrated approach of how we are like able to accompany people to help them become who God's created them to be. And we use a lot of like modern tools to make the process even more integrated to people's lives. So it's a daily process that's different than traditional psychotherapy, where that's a once a week 45-minute window or 60-minute window, where that can feel a little discombobulated or a little jarring, where you're like stop and go. Mentorship is something that you take with you throughout your whole life, or throughout your life, right? Like this integration into your life where if you're feeling triggered one day, you can hop into our app and send a message to me, your mentor, and then within 24 hours, you're going to hear back from me. You also get full access to Catholic Psych's library of resources. And this is something that I've offered in the past and have had men sign up, a number of men sign up and see a lot of great results in their journey to overcoming addiction. And so something that I've offered in the past, something that I'll continue to offer. But there was kind of a disconnect in this offer, so mentorship itself, and where I felt some men were at. And so this is something that's really exciting, a project that I've been thinking about for some time now that I want to launch, is this Built for More, an 8-week mindfulness boot camp that is totally centered on the brotherhood and how mindfulness can take us over a lot of the humps in this battle for overcoming lust, overcoming addiction. And so what do you get with the mindfulness bootcamp? You're going to get free access to the 56-day Catholic mindfulness retreat from Catholic Psych. I'm going to do 20 to 30-minute teaching videos each week, particularly how the mindfulness integrates with us overcoming addiction and lust. And it's such a huge tool because what is mindfulness? It's like this training in training in awareness. Like you continue to dive into like exercising that muscle of awareness helps you better understand these emotional triggers and wounds, which again is that 3-step paradigm. It helps you live that out to go from awareness to understanding to action. Then I want to do this in brotherhood too. So there's going to be 60-minute like support groups weekly. So it's 8 weeks of support groups. And then we're all going to be on a Discord server together, which is a community where it's like social media, but a little more exclusive, right? Whoever, like, the people who sign up are going to be the people that are there, no more. So like the 8 people, like that's what I'm going to cap the first group off as, is like 8 people sign up. Those who are going to be in the private Discord community, and we're going to be interacting daily with each other, right? One of the things that we could get in trouble with when we jump into a community of sorts is that, like, if it doesn't get used, then we don't actually grow in that community. And so one of the kind of stipulations is like, I want you to grow. And so there's going to be a daily reflection in the Discord server every day. And then I'll be there for direct access. So I'll be in the Discord server. People can ask me questions for extra support, all that. And then I also want to offer this at as most reasonable price as possible, and also increase the idea of, like, how can you bring more brothers into this? Because the more we can lean into a relationship, the better. And so I'm going to offer $100 off for each brother you bring. So if you bring a brother, you'll get $100 off. That brother will get $100 off, and it'll be great because we'll have more guys working and not working, but living this battle together, fighting this battle together. So those are the 2 things that I offer that I will help the most to really point the needle or change the needle, move the needle. That's what I'm looking for. Move the needle in this battle. I want to give you like an idea of what the pricing looks like for each of these offers, because I'm going to be transparent with that. Typically, mentorship, I charge $1,000 a month, and what that roughly breaks out to hourly is like $100 an hour. Because like when you're working together daily, it's like 2.5 hours of conversation that you're looking at, and so $1,000, $100 an hour is roughly what that looks like. And I've offered this workshop deal before in the past that a lot of guys have taken up. On the first 3 months after this workshop, if you sign up for mentorship today, or with this workshop promo, then the first 3 months will be half off. And then, just something that I am so passionate about helping guys with this. Like, I'm going to offer like some pretty bulky discounts, and it's not about the money for me. It's about helping guys find freedom in this. And so for the first 3 months, if you haven't signed up for mentorship before, you're signing up for mentorship for the first time, I want to give guys half off for 3 months. Again, it's daily individual accompaniment. You can go to my website, craftitformore.com, to learn more about what mentorship is. And the first step's always like a free 30-minute consultation call with me. So if this is something that you want this mentorship to really help you move the needle, to help you find freedom, to help you go deeper, then go to my website, craftitformore.com, and sign up for a free call. And we'll start then and there on a strategy call. Like, tell me you went to the workshop, and I can give you that discount, and then we'll get things rolling. For the 8-week program, Built for More, it's going to start at $397 for all 8 weeks. So quite a bit less than mentorship. So you're looking at $400 for the whole program, $200 a month. You're going to get that Catholic Mindfulness virtual retreat, the 20 to 30 minute teaching videos from myself, the weekly 60-minute live brotherhood sessions, direct access to myself, and then again $100 off if you bring a brother for you and the brother. So it could go down to as little as $297. And then, because relationship is what you need, my last offer is like, if you sign up for mentorship, then I will let you join build for more, built for more, that is, for only $97, $300 off. Like, I know how important relationship is, and I want you to have as much tools as you can have in this battle. So essentially what you're looking at for $550 a month is all of mentorship plus all of built for more. And it doesn't get much better than that price wise, for because it's like you're not just getting my support, you're getting support from other brothers, you're getting an excellent retreat put together by the Catholic Psych Institute, and yeah, it's like, I'm like, if I could imagine the perfect scenario for myself and what I would most benefit from if I was still early in the stage of like overcoming addiction, this is what I would want. And so this is what I'm offering folks. So that's the offer to you, to anyone who's listening on this in live, on the replay, and what we can do working together and how much it would cost. There's also financial, like, for both Built for More and mentorship, there's financial scholarships folks can apply for it. Just send me an email at nick@craftedformore.com, and we can talk more about that. So that's that. If you're interested in the boot camp, I want you to go to craftedformore.com/bootcamp. That's where you can apply to get into the mindfulness boot camp. The Built for More boot camp is by going to craftedformore.com. Again, that's the $397 for those 2 months. If you bring a brother, then we're dropping that down $100 for each of you. And then that website link, that URL that you see on the screen right now, has a lot more information on what the group will look like. And then you can apply there. And after you apply, I'll review the application and then respond within 48 hours personally, just to let you know, like, hey, it seems like you're a great fit. Let's do this thing. Let's start to work together and become more who God's created you to be. And this all comes back to that very most important thing that we need to keep in mind, is that porn and masturbation are the symptoms. There's a deeper root problem here, and this workshop, this boot camp that I'm offering, will help you identify what that wounded area is. And it's not just going to help you like overcome porn and better navigate lust, but it's actually going to help you become a lot better man in the process. So really invite you to check that out. craftedformore.com/bootcamp. On the screen is a quick review of the workshop. The number one thing we need to keep in mind, which I've drilled into your heads at this point a number of times, the simple framework of the MORE method: awareness, understanding, action. Relationship is the most powerful tool, and then opportunities to work together as brothers. Any questions, I'll take those now, and I'll just hang out for the next couple minutes. Any questions about like what I do as a mentor, any questions about the workshop, any questions about future plans, all of that is fair game and can be asked here and now. So I'll give it a few minutes, let the chat catch up, and then when everyone's questions are asked and answered in full, we'll call it a wrap and we'll call it a day. So maybe I'll start researching to find right now I'm using a system called OBS. Might not be the fastest ping on chat as far as like people talking versus not talking. And so one of the beautiful things about the internet, about going live, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what that delay is going to look like. But we'll take just a few minutes for any questions, and then we'll wrap things up. Awesome, Nick. Thanks for all the information. Not sure if I have any questions at the moment, but I'm excited to check out the boot camp. Awesome. Great to have you here. And if people think of questions after the fact too, you can my email is nick@crafterformore.com. So that URL, minus the boot camp, just nick@crafterformore.com. Sometimes that happens, like where the questions come up a little bit later. So sweet. All right, this has been an awesome time. I've enjoyed being here with everyone live, and then catching folks also, uh, who's ever listening to this in the replay. This is future Nick saying thanks for being here, and I'm praying for every one of you guys. I really want to, like, this is a passion of mine to help men find freedom from lust, overcome addiction, and like just love sharing what I've learned, and yeah, and then just love to be a resource for guys in this way. So I'm gonna leave it there for now. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. I hope that you all have a fantastic rest of your Thursday, and subscribe, stay in touch, because there's going to be a lot more to come of